The air was cold that night in 1887, much like it is now here in the cemetery. But there's a big difference. Now, it's hot chocolate by the fire, kind of cold. Back then, it was shivered to your bones and die kind of cold. And it was in this weather that a man named Patrick Dalton made his way to the top of the mountain. He had traveled up this mountain many times before. As a boy, he would visit the town of Ebensburg, Pennsylvania, and always took the scenic route up the mountain. But tonight was different. He wasn't just going for a stroll. He needed to get to the tunnel, and fast. You see, the day before, Dalton and two other men robbed a train on the mountain pass. They had made off with a lot of money, but not without casualties. 2 people had died in the heist, which meant Dalton and company had to leave town. They knew the police were after them, so they planned to hide out in a cave along the tracks until things cooled down. The only problem was they couldn't agree on which cave. Dalton wanted to stay in the Devil's Den, a large cave with an opening high up on the side of the mountain. It was almost impossible to find, which was exactly what Dalton was looking for. The other 2 robbers wanted to go somewhere else, somewhere easier to get to, somewhere like the Hangsman's Tunnel. This tunnel was actually an old railroad tunnel that hadn't been used in years. It was here that criminals were hanged in the early days of the railroad, when the gallows overflowed, that is. When the noose wasn't enough to do the job, they would drag the still living, still breathing felons through this tunnel and hang them from the ceiling beams. So it was here in this tunnel that Dalton and his 2 friends decided to hole up for the night. They didn't know it yet, but they wouldn't be alone. People traveling along the road rarely did so at night, especially not in this weather. But those who did often heard chains dragging along the tunnel floor or choking sounds from within. And then, of course, there were the shadowy figures. Some travelers said they saw a man in the distance swinging from the tunnel ceiling, only to disappear after a few seconds. Others claimed to see several figures hanging from the beams, sometimes moving, sometimes not. But no one ever stopped to investigate. Not after they'd heard the stories from others, that is. Not even the bravest of souls wanted to walk into that tunnel at night. So it remained relatively undisturbed until one day someone thought it would be funny to sneak in and explore. The first explorers found the place creepy but not dangerous, or so they thought. Some said they felt cold spots, while others swore they could hear the chains dragging. None of them stayed long enough to find out if it was true, because after about half an hour, they all ran out of the tunnel as fast as they could, convinced that whatever was in there didn't want them to explore further. But some of the braver types weren't convinced. They went back again and again, each time trying to venture a little deeper into the tunnel than they did before. One group said they found writing on the walls, faded messages left behind by those who had been hanged there, pleading for help or just saying goodbye. Then there were the footprints. Some explorers swore they saw footprints in the dust, markings made by hobnailed boots, just the sort of boots that the Hanged Man's Tunnel was famous for leaving behind. Unfortunately, no one ever got a picture. When the explorers shone their flashlights on the marks, they disappeared. By the time they pulled out their cameras, the prints were gone. If this was some elaborate hoax, it was a good one. But these explorers were convinced there was more to it. And it wasn't long before they learned the hard way how much more. More people started to go missing after visiting the tunnel. At first, it was just a handful of thrill seekers who never came back out. Then it started to pick up steam. More and more people were disappearing, including one young woman who turned back after seeing a shadowy figure standing right next to her. Her name was Mary Lou Fulton. She told the story of what happened to her for the rest of her life, claiming she was saved by an unseen force. According to her story, she was exploring the tunnel with her boyfriend when she saw the figure standing right next to her. She turned to her boyfriend and told him to run, but when she turned back, the figure was gone. She ran as fast as she could, but every time she looked over her shoulder, the same figure was there. She made it to the mouth of the tunnel, collapsed on the ground, never to enter the tunnel again. And she wasn't the only one. Many people sworn off the tunnel after hearing her story. Still, a select few kept going back. They explored the tunnel during the day, taking pictures and making videos, each time bringing more friends with them. The group would enter the tunnel, the door would slam shut behind them, and no one would come out. Some of the townspeople said this was proof that the tunnel was cursed. No one should go in, and no one would come out. What happened to those brave souls who entered the tunnel? That's anyone's guess. Perhaps they were taken by the spirits that haunted the place, or maybe they were trapped when the tunnel collapsed. That's right. Over time, parts of the tunnel collapsed, blocking the entrance completely. For a while, the only way in was through a hole in the roof, a small hole that only a child could fit through. Some said this was done on purpose, that whoever was haunting the tunnel sealed the entrance so no one could escape. For whatever reason, the entrances were sealed. No one could get in or out. To this day, the tunnel remains sealed, though some of the braver types have tried to break inside. We don't know what they were looking for, but we do know they haven't come out yet. But some say the spirits have other plans for those who try to disturb their rest. One day in 1992, a man named David Schmidt decided to explore the tunnel. He crawled through the hole in the roof and disappeared. Rescue workers heard him fall, but by the time they reached the bottom of the pile of rocks, he was dead. The tunnel had claimed another victim. They never found any bodies, but they did find a few artifacts, personal belongings that showed the tunnel had claimed many victims over the years. There were shoes and hats, even clothing. And then there were the chains, the ones they used to drag the condemned through the tunnel. These chains were covered in rust, but they were real. Plus, no one had put them there. The tunnel had been sealed for decades, yet the chains were new. This, plus the collapsed tunnels, was enough to convince most people the tunnel was cursed. There was no need to go in there. The tunnel was sealed, the area evacuated, and the legend only grew. Stories spread across the country about the Hanged Man's Tunnel, drawing in ghost hunters and thrill-seekers alike. Even today, people are drawn to the tunnel, though you won't find any evidence of it. The Hanged Man's Tunnel was torn down in the early 1990s, right around the time that David Schmidt died. In fact, if you go to the site today, you won't find anything except a few headstones. That's right. This entire section of the cemetery was moved in the early 1990s, right around the time that David Schmidt died. It's unclear why this particular part of the cemetery was chosen for the tunnel, but some believe it was because the spirits chose this place. Others say it's simply where the land was cheapest. Still, the story of the Hanged Man's Tunnel lives on. People say that if you go to the site at midnight, you can hear the wind whipping through the trees, the chains dragging along the ground, the faint sound of footsteps, and of course, the noose swaying in the wind. So will you go to the site tonight? Do you think there's something evil buried beneath this cemetery? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe. Now check out this video on what the hell is the Jersey Devil, or click this other video instead.